When I was away on a business trip, sitting in a hotel room far from home, I never imagined my phone would hold the kind of news that would rip the ground out from under me. My parents called me casually, almost like they were telling me about the weather, and dropped the bomb. The house I had spent years saving for, designing, and finally making my dream come true was gone. Sold. Just like that. And not because they needed to cover some emergency, not because something tragic had happened. No, they sold my dream house to pay for my brother's luxury vacation in Europe, complete with 5-star hotels, champagne parties, and designer shopping sprees. At first, I thought it was a cruel joke, some twisted way of testing my reaction. But when I demanded details, my mother sighed and said, "You weren't using it anyway. You're always busy with work. And your brother needed this. He deserves a break." I froze. The word deserves echoed in my head like a slap. My brother had always been the golden child, the one who failed upwards, who racked up debt and mistakes, only to have my parents sweep in and clean up his messes. And me? I was the reliable one, the one who studied, who worked, who built something of my own. That house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was my independence, my sanctuary, my proof that I could make it on my own. And they stripped it away, signing the papers without even asking me. Sitting there in that hotel room, my laptop open with contracts for my clients, I felt something inside me snap. My parents thought I would swallow it, like I always did. They thought I'd keep quiet, let my brother enjoy his champagne on the French Riviera while I picked up the pieces. But this time, they had no idea what was coming. I sat there staring at the bland wallpaper of the hotel room, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out every thought. I replayed their words over and over. You weren't using it anyway. As if my years of sacrifice meant nothing. I remembered the sleepless nights, the double shifts, the weekends where all I did was work and save. Every corner of that house had a piece of me in it, the kitchen tiles I chose after weeks of searching, the reading nook by the window where I planned to drink coffee on Sunday mornings, the little garden patch where I wanted to plant herbs. They weren't just selling property, they were erasing me. And the worst part? They acted like it was theirs to take. I wasn't even given the dignity of a phone call before the deal was signed. It was already done. Sold, finalized, money wired, out. All while I was hundreds of miles away negotiating deals for my job, still believing I had a home to return to. My brother's voice played in my head, smug and careless. You stress too much. Life is about enjoyment. He always said that right before maxing out another credit card or quitting another job. And my parents always looked at me with that expression, half pleading, half accusing, saying, "He just needs help, can't you understand?" As if my role in life was to finance his irresponsibility. But this wasn't help. This was theft. This was betrayal in its rawest form. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I sat there quietly, the anger coiling into something sharper, something more dangerous. They thought they knew me, the dutiful daughter who would swallow the pain, who would cry in silence but never fight back. They had no idea they had just pushed me to a point of no return. And as I stared at my phone, scrolling through the photos I had saved of the house, the day I got the keys, the sunlight flooding into the living room, my smile wide and full of pride, a single thought anchored itself in my chest. I was going to make them regret underestimating me. The next morning, I went through the motions of my business trip, shaking hands, presenting slides, pretending to care about contracts, but my mind was elsewhere, burning with betrayal. I checked the property records online during a coffee break, and sure enough, the deed had been transferred 2 days ago. Not only that, but the buyer was a cash buyer, meaning my parents hadn't even tried to get a fair price. They wanted quick money. And when I dug deeper, I nearly dropped my phone. The wire transfer didn't even go into their account. It went directly to my brother's name. He hadn't just been gifted my home. They had literally handed him every cent of its value, so he could play king in some foreign paradise. That night, alone in my hotel bed, I scrolled through his Instagram. Pictures of him already at the airport, boarding a first-class flight with champagne in hand. A smug caption, "Time to live the life I deserve. Europe, here I come." My vision blurred with fury. Every like on his post felt like another knife twisting into me. I imagined him strolling through Parisian boutiques with money that had been meant for my mortgage, dining in Rome while I was still eating hotel takeout, sleeping on silk sheets bought with the sacrifice of my years. And my parents. They had liked the post. They had commented hearts. I realized then that this wasn't just about favoritism anymore. This was collusion. They hadn't just chosen him over me. They had actively destroyed me for him. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, and something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to be their silent scapegoat anymore. I wasn't going to come home and beg for scraps of what used to be mine. I was going to build a plan, precise, methodical, and undeniable. And when I was done, my parents and my golden brother would finally understand the cost of erasing me. When my flight home finally landed, I didn't go straight to see my parents like they probably expected. Instead, I went directly to the county office. I knew my name had been on that deed. I had purchased the house in my own name, every document signed by me alone, every payment traceable to my accounts. So when I pulled up the records, I felt both relief and rage twist together inside me. Yes, the house had been sold, but the sale was illegal. My parents had forged my signature. The sloppiness of it was almost insulting. The handwriting didn't match. The notary stamp was from a town 3 hours away, and the witnesses listed were names I didn't even recognize. They had counted on me being too compliant, too trusting to look. And in that moment, I felt a surge of power I hadn't felt before. They thought they had won, but they had actually walked straight into a trap of their own making. I spent the next few days quietly gathering everything I needed. Screenshots of the wire transfer, copies of the deed and signatures, old texts where my parents admitted the house was mine, telling me how proud they were when I bought it. Emails from the mortgage company confirming every payment had come from me. Each piece of evidence was like a brick in the wall I was building, a wall that was about to crash down on them. Meanwhile, my brother kept posting. Luxury hotel rooms with views of the Eiffel Tower, shopping bags piled on the bed, wine glasses raised in selfies with strangers he had just met. My parents commented on every single one, showering him with praise, like he was some kind of hero for burning through stolen money. I didn't comment. I didn't call. I didn't warn them. I let them enjoy their little fantasy world while I sat quietly with my growing arsenal of facts, preparing for the day when all three of them would realize the game was over. By the end of that week, I had already spoken with a lawyer. When I laid out the documents on his desk, he didn't even try to hide his reaction. "This is blatant fraud," he said, tapping his pen against the forged signature. "They didn't just cross a line, they bulldozed it. You have an airtight case." He explained that not only could I void the sale and reclaim the house, but I could also pursue criminal charges, forgery, wire fraud, even conspiracy, since multiple people had been involved. I walked out of that office with a folder of copies and a heart that finally felt steady again. For the first time since that phone call in the hotel, I could breathe. My parents still called me, leaving voicemails dripping with guilt tactics. "You don't understand. Your brother was under so much stress. It was just a house, you can always get another one. Family should come before material things." I saved every message. Each one was proof that they knew exactly what they had done and why. Meanwhile, my brother was still abroad, uploading reels of him laughing, on yachts, flashing designer watches, eating meals that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I didn't comment. I didn't let a single word slip. But every time I saw his smirk on my phone screen, my resolve grew sharper. The day would come when he'd step off that plane, expecting a hero's welcome, and instead he would find lawyers, waiting with papers in hand. I wasn't just going to take back my house. I was going to take back my power. And this time, there would be no going back to the obedient daughter role they thought they could keep me in forever. 2 weeks later, the papers were filed, and the ripple effect hit like a storm. First, the county clerk froze the title transfer. My so-called buyers received a notice that the deed was under dispute, and suddenly the sale wasn't so final anymore. Then the bank flagged the wire transfer to my brother, because when money moves that fast and in that amount tied to forged documents, it triggers all kinds of red alarms. My parents didn't expect that. I got a panicked voicemail from my mother, her voice shaking. "Why are the authorities calling us? Why are they saying the sale isn't valid? We thought you'd understand. Why are you doing this to us?" That line, "Why are you doing this to us?" nearly made me laugh. As if I had forged my own name, handed over my own house, and wired money into my brother's account for him to drink away in Monaco. No, this wasn't me doing anything to them. This was the first time they were facing consequences for what they had done. My lawyer kept me updated, and with every email, my heart beat faster. Forgery carries penalties. Fraud carries penalties. My parents weren't just helping their son anymore. They were criminals in the eyes of the law. And my brother? He was blissfully unaware, still uploading his little videos, still hashtagging "our blessed under shots of champagne towers." But the net was already closing around him. By the time he came back, the party would be over, and I wasn't going to shield him from the fallout. Not anymore. When my brother finally landed back in the country, tanned and grinning, he walked into a nightmare he didn't see coming. I was sitting quietly in the lawyer's office the day he was served. The look on his face when the papers hit his hand was almost satisfying enough to erase the months of rage. Almost. He sputtered, laughed, nervously tried to joke his way out of it. "This must be some mistake. My sister wouldn't do this. My parents said it was fine." But the attorney's calm voice cut through his denial. "Forgery is not fine. Wire fraud is not fine. You're facing charges." Within hours, the drama exploded. My parents stormed into my house, or rather, the apartment I'd been renting since they stole mine, and demanded to know why I was attacking the family. My father banged his fist against the table, shouting about loyalty, about blood being thicker than water. My mother cried, asking how I could do this to my own brother, but I didn't shout back. I didn't cry. I simply slid the folder of evidence across the table. Bank statements, forged signatures, emails, their voicemails transcribed word for word, every single receipt of their betrayal. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents' faces went pale as the reality sank in. My brother tried to bluster, claiming he didn't know where the money had come from, but even his arrogance cracked when he realized the bank had already frozen his accounts. The designer suits, the watches, the five-star hotels, they had been paid for with stolen money, and now it was all gone. Watching them unravel, I felt a strange calm settle over me. For years, they had treated me like a backup plan, a wallet, a shadow. But here, in this moment, I wasn't the quiet daughter anymore. I was the storm they never believed I could be. The weeks that followed were brutal for them. My parents were summoned to court, forced to stand in front of a judge and explain how they had somehow decided it was acceptable to sell property that wasn't theirs. Their excuses sounded pathetic even to my own ears. "We thought she wouldn't mind. It was for her brother's well-being. Family comes first." The judge didn't even bother hiding his disapproval. "Family or not," he said sternly, "you committed fraud. You cannot sign away what does not belong to you." The courtroom was silent except for my brother's constant fidgeting, his bravado gone as the list of charges was read aloud. Forgery, fraud, misappropriation of funds. The sentence wasn't prison, not yet, but probation, fines, restitution, and the black mark of a criminal record were enough to strip the shine off their arrogance. My brother's bank account remained frozen, his luxury lifestyle crumbling, overnight. His so-called friends vanished as soon as the money dried up, and the silence on his once busy social media was almost poetic. Meanwhile, my parents had to put their own house up as collateral just to cover the legal costs. For once, their golden boy wasn't being shielded. For once, I wasn't the one paying the bill. When the judge ruled the house sale void and my property officially returned to me, I stood taller than I ever had in my life. The house was mine again, legally and publicly. No one could take it from me now. Walking through the empty rooms after the keys were placed back in my hand, I ran my fingers across the walls and whispered to myself, "Never again." They thought they had broken me. Instead, they had set me free. After the court hearings, my parents tried every angle they knew to reel me back in. They showed up at my doorstep with homemade food, acting as if nothing had happened, calling me their little girl again. My mother clutched my arm and whispered, "We can move past this, can't we? Family shouldn't stay divided." My father even promised to make it up to me, though the words sounded hollow, like he didn't even believe them himself. I didn't slam the door in their faces, but I didn't let them in either. I told them calmly, "You chose your son's vacation over my life's work. That isn't something you just patch over with dinner." My brother, on the other hand, wasn't nearly as subtle. He raged. He called me ungrateful, selfish, a traitor. He sent long, furious texts about how I'd ruined his reputation and destroyed his future. But I didn't delete those texts. I saved them. Each one was just more proof of who he really was. While they scrambled in chaos, I poured my energy back into the life I had nearly lost. I repainted the walls of my house. I planted herbs in the little garden patch I dreamed about for years. I filled the reading nook with soft cushions and books I had been meaning to buy. Each corner I restored felt like a reclamation of myself. And while my parents and brother drowned in legal fees, frozen accounts, and the weight of their own mistakes, I was finally, quietly, at peace. I no longer needed their approval, their affection, or their validation. I had taken back what was mine, and with it, I had taken back my freedom. Months passed, and the silence between us became permanent. Holidays came and went without a single phone call. At first, I thought it might sting, but instead, I felt lighter than I ever had. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing myself for the next guilt trip, the next demand, the next sacrifice I was expected to make. My parents eventually sold their own house to cover debts from my brother's failed business ventures, and when word reached me that they had moved into a cramped rental, I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. They had spent decades putting him on a pedestal while treating me like a safety net, and now they were living in the mess they created together. My brother still tried to reach out occasionally, but his messages had changed tone. The rage was gone, replaced with desperation. "Please, just lend me something until I get back on my feet." "You know I'll pay you back." I never responded, because I finally understood something I should have realized long ago. Family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by respect. And they had none for me. Standing in my kitchen one quiet evening, sipping coffee by the window of the home I had fought to reclaim, I realized that revenge hadn't come in the form of screaming or dramatic confrontations. It had come in the form of boundaries, of walking away, of letting them collapse under the weight of their own choices. My house stood tall, restored, and mine again, while their empire of favoritism had crumbled into dust. And that, I thought, was the sweetest justice of all. One evening, as I sat in my reading nook with the lamp casting a soft glow across the pages of my book, I thought back to the girl I had been before all of this. The daughter who worked herself to exhaustion just to hear a sliver of approval, the sister who quietly handed over her savings when her brother stumbled again. I hardly recognized her anymore. The version of me that remained was sharper, calmer, untouchable. I didn't need their validation. I had built my own life brick by brick, and when they tried to take it from me, I had fought back and won. Sometimes neighbors would ask about my family, remembering the times my parents had visited the house before. I'd smile politely and change the subject. I no longer owed anyone an explanation. Their downfall was their own story to carry, not mine. My story was the quiet joy of independence, the sound of herbs growing in the garden, the freedom of decorating every corner exactly how I wanted, the peace of walking through the front door and knowing no one could take this from me again. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was living here, in the home I had earned, while the people who betrayed me sat in silence, wondering why the daughter they underestimated never came back to save them. I didn't need to slam doors or shout. I had already closed the only door that mattered, the one to my trust, and I would never open it for them again. As the seasons changed, I realized how completely my life had shifted. The house that once symbolized years of sacrifice and betrayal had become my sanctuary, a living reminder of resilience. Every spring morning when I opened the curtains and felt sunlight pour in across the hardwood floors, I felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself. I threw small dinner parties with friends who laughed around my table, people who valued me not for what I could provide, but for who I was. The rooms were filled with warmth, not guilt. Meanwhile, I heard whispers of my parents and brother through the grapevine, my father struggling with odd jobs, my mother still making excuses for my brother, and my brother himself drifting from scheme to scheme, none of them working. The three of them had built a life around taking from me, and when that ended, they had nothing left. I sometimes wondered if they sat together in their cramped rental, regretting the day they decided my dream house was theirs to sell. But the truth was, it didn't matter anymore. Their regrets, if they had any, weren't my burden. The younger version of me would have tried to fix them, to help, to mend. But I had finally learned that some people aren't meant to be saved, especially when saving them requires destroying yourself. My revenge wasn't about courtrooms or frozen bank accounts, though those had been satisfying. It was about walking away and building a life they couldn't touch. A life where their names carried no weight, where their approval meant nothing, where their betrayal was just the prologue to my independence. And as I stood one evening in the garden, herbs brushing against my fingertips, the sun setting behind the house I had fought so hard to reclaim, I felt something deeper than triumph. I felt peace. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by being their daughter or his sister. I was just me, stronger, free, whole. And I knew one truth with absolute clarity. They had taken my house, but in the end, I had taken back my power. And that was worth more than any luxury getaway could ever buy.